meeting is being recorded.
Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach. So it is the holiday Passover. And I'm going to draw from, since I'm not going to be here next week, it gives me an opportunity to draw from next week's Parsha, which is Shemini. And there's an interesting concept that is involved in Shemini, at least in my view there is, with Passover. So Passover is, of course, our freedom. But there's the symbolism of the matzah. Now, what is matzah? It is the unleavened bread. It is the bread that our ancestors made in haste. As Harvey discussed last week, it's made within 18 minutes. You roll it out, you add water, you roll it out, it goes right into the oven, 18 minutes. Done. Of course, back then, they didn't know anything about yeast. They just knew that if they left things out long enough, it rose. There was yeast all over the place. Same thing with yogurt. They didn't know about the acidophilus. They just knew that when milk spoiled, it suddenly became yogurt, this really delicious treat. But there's a symbolism to matzah. If you notice, when going through the offerings, a lot of them, the mincha offering that goes with a lot of those meat offerings is with matzah. In fact, during the morning blessings during the week, Psalm 100 is eliminated. Now, most of you probably don't do the weekday Shachrit service, but Psalm 100 is eliminated during matzah because it's one of the few psalms that they used leavened bread. But the symbolism of matzah is, they call it lechem oni, poor bread. What's poor about it? It's not risen. It's a very simple, it's a very humble bread. And therein lies the key. Because enleavening has the symbolism, the metaphor of arrogance. Right? It's risen. Like your ego is risen. So that's one of the reasons why baskets of the unleavened bread was used during a lot of the offerings. Okay, let's flash forward to next week's Torah reading, which is Shemini. Now, what happens in Shemini? Aaron's two older sons, he had four. He started out with four. And Nadav and Abihu, who were his older sons, and in line to be the high priests, went into the Mishkan, went into the Kadosh Kodashim, the Holy of Holies. The only time, as God told Aaron and the priests, the only time you go into that inner sanctum is during Yom Kippur. That's it. Otherwise, you don't go in there. And when you do go in there, you use this very specific combination of incense as part of the service. Nadav and Abihu went in there, not during Yom Kippur, with, as the Torah describes it, an alien incense. And they were immediately zapped. And of course, Moses and Aaron had to go in and they had to ask one of Aaron's cousins, because they were not priests, they were Levites, to go in and retrieve the burnt bodies. Because otherwise it would have made, because, Shemini was the 8th day and they were consecrating the priests, it would have made them tameh, it would have made them impure, they couldn't do it. Following this, God makes one of the commandments, he tells them, don't pray after you've had alcohol. You can have alcohol after you pray, but don't have it before you pray. So the thinking is that Nadav and Abihu were celebrating a little too much, and depending again on which sage you listen to, they got real arrogant. Some sages say they were thinking, when are Moses and Aaron going to die so we can take over? Now, you would think that those two guys, being sons of Aaron, probably weren't that rash or brash about that. But the point is that they walked in there with the wrong intention, and it led to their doom. One of the reasons Moses is considered to be our greatest prophet, and why God singled him out, is because of his humility. He would sit there, remember, he would sit there and he would adjudicate, and he would listen to people, and he would sit there all day if he had to, listening to people, settling disputes, teaching Torah, addressing people's issues and challenges. And it took his father-in-law to come and say, well, you're going to wear yourself out, you're going to wear them out, delegate. But Moses was so devoted, he wanted to do it himself. It never occurred to him to think of maybe having somebody else fill in a little bit for the minor issues. He was that great. Just like whenever the people rebelled, what did he do? He threw himself on his face. He said, why are you doing this? He didn't take his staff and start beating them. He had that humility, like the bread, like the matzah. What does the word matzah mean? If you take the nikud marks out of it, the vowels, the little Morse code, dots and dashes, is it the word matzah or is it the word mitzvah? Is it the bread or is it the commandment? You have to be humble to do the right thing. We see this in public, in public face. We see this with people who are in the public. People get big. We've seen this with some clergy. You're standing up here, people looking at you, they're thinking, wow, rock stars, politicians, actors, actresses, heads of state. They go in there, people are just falling all over them, and they're into it. They succumb to it. They succumb to the ego. Now, I think I'm going to borrow from I think this is a Christian saying. What does ego stand for? Edging God out? Yeah. And that's what it does. That's what it does. Look at all the kings and the ancient priests. Look at Pharaoh, fancied himself a god. If you're going to fancy yourself a god, you better take responsibility for what you're doing, because these people were willful. We go back to Noah, right? The flood. What happened with the flood? At the end of the previous portion, it says that the men of Elohim took the daughters of Adam, of men, as their wives. Now, Elohim can be translated in many different ways. We understand it to be God, God's attribute of justice. It's also a generic term. It can mean gods with a small g. And since it involves justice, it can also mean magistrates, just judges. So who was doing the judging back then? The kings and the princes, right? And whatever they said goes. They were enforcing their will. That was part of the evil that God said, I'm just going to flood them out. I'm just drown them out. So there's a lot in the Torah about humility and ego. And Nadab and Abihu, unfortunately, may have paid for their arrogance with their lives, as did the people of the flood. It was their ego that got ahead of them. You will see world leaders that take control of a country or an area. And what happens? They fall. Because they don't have, the only people's interest they have is their own. Their doom is sure to come. So during Passover, the next couple of days when you're eating matzah, look at this humble bread. Without an ego, without any arrogance, without any pomposity. How do you say pompous in Spanish?
Pompeo.
Pompeo. Not like Mike Pompeo, that never worked. I don't want to go there. Avoid the pomposity, avoid the arrogance. That's part of the lesson of Passover. Look what God did to the arrogant Pharaoh who thought he was above it. And there it is. Be humble like Moses. Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach.